Rob Milt and my co-chair Joanna McCarthy and our SEPAC board members. Tonight's forum will introduce Milton's 2025 school committee and select board candidates and shine an important light on the needs and concerns of families and students who are accessing special education in Milton. Before we begin, I wanted to outline what SEPAC is and who we are. SEPAC is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization whose focus is three-pronged: to advocate for all students, and particularly the rights of students with disabilities, to work together with the district for positive improvements and change, and to provide families with information, training, and opportunities for networking. Milton has a total student enrollment of nearly 4,400 students, and nearly 1 in 3 are students accessing special education services. For these students, in order to meet their specific educational and social needs.
What happened? We lost the audio.
Oh, you went on mute.
Sorry about that. Let me start over. We have a student enrollment of nearly 4,400 students, and nearly 1 in 3 are students accessing special education services. For these students, in order to meet their specific educational and social needs, MPS is required by federal and state laws to develop and implement what is called either a 504 plan or an IEP. SEPAC consists of parents and family members of children who are accessing special education in Milton, and we partner with our school administrators, staff, and school committee members to collaborate and improve the district's special education programs and services. If you wish to learn more about what we do, you can find more information at our website, which we'll also post in the chat.
All right, great. This is Rob Milt. There are 2 available seats for the Milton School Committee this year, and there are 4 candidates running for those 2 seats. Those are Cherise Stevie Caldwell, Nathan Hutto, Dan O'Neill, and Anna Varghese. There also tonight we'll have a discussion with our select board candidates, and those candidates, or 4 candidates running, are Winston Daly, Megan Haggerty, Paul Hogan, and Roxanne Musto. Unfortunately, Roxanne Musto has let us know that she has a prior commitment and will be unable to attend tonight's SEPAC forum. We'll first start with the candidates for the school committee. We're grateful that they are here joining us tonight. I'd like to take a moment now to remind you all that as opposed to a Q&A session or a more formal debate, tonight's event is a candidate forum that will provide an opportunity for candidates to take turns responding to a few questions from the SEPAC board. One of our board members will be keeping time for candidates' answers, which should be kept to 3 minutes apiece. And for candidates, please ensure that you keep an eye on our Zoom window, as our board members will indicate a 1-minute warning for you to wrap up your remarks. Also, we will alternate the order in which our questions are answered by the candidates. We've decided to ask questions of candidates in alphabetical order by last name. And for clarity for our audience, these questions have not been shared with the candidates in advance of when they hear them tonight. We know that each candidate has a campaign website set up. We will post them to the chat. We'll post those URLs for those websites so the attendees you can follow directly and learn more about their platforms, and you can contact the candidates with any specific questions. We are also recording this forum on Zoom. A link to the recording will be shared with Milton Access TV. We'll also post it tomorrow on the SEPAC website. Please share the link with town residents you know who are unable to join live this evening. For all of our candidates, we ask that you keep this discussion focused on policy and your vision for education at Milton. Members of SEPAC advocate for all children and not solely on behalf of children with disabilities. This is a public meeting that is recorded, and we ask that you not identify a minor or a minor's disability during tonight's forum. Lastly, we ask that all attendees please keep yourself muted so as not to accidentally interrupt the forum. Thank you. So we will kick off with the first question. We'll start with Anna, then we'll follow by Stevie, then Nathan, and then finally Dan. And that first question is, please tell us why you've decided to run for a seat on the Milton Public School Committee and provide specific examples of your contributions and/or accomplishments to improve educational outcomes. And now the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Thank you so much for having me this evening. As you know, probably know, I currently serve on the Milton School Committee. I'm coming in at the end of my 3rd year. And I have to say, I have learned so much about special education. When I first ran 3 years ago, I think a lot of my platform was more aspirational, but as I really got into it and really working with more recently with Danielle Wetmore, the Director of Student Services, I have learned so much, having Amanda Serio, who was also used to be on the SEPAC board before, and collaborating with her on a lot. I've learned so much. In terms of contributions, what I would like to say is I've advocated for interventionists. That has been just really, really important for me, especially for our students coming out of COVID, who've been really lost a lot during that time and have been behind. That is something that I've advocated for from my first year on school committee. It's something, for instance, our math interventionist, we now have a dedicated interventionist at each school. When I first started, there was one that went between schools. And as you know, when we have one interventionist who's going between 4 elementary schools, there's very little time for them to dedicate to the students that need help. So this year, actually, for the first time during our site council presentations from each of the schools, it was so great. And so it was just amazing to listen to the principals and building leaders talk about the impact that these interventionists have made and the gains that they have made in their data. So that was something I just feel really, really happy to have been a part of. And I am grateful for my colleagues on school committee who have really supported those advocacies. And I really am just grateful to have accomplished that in such a short amount of time. And I know when resources are tight, it's really hard to kind of prioritize where do we make those investments, but that's something that I will refuse to compromise on, because I really think they make all the difference for our students, especially ones that need that extra help. And it's just something that shows lots of gains. The other thing I would like to say is last year looking at our data, it was really clear that we needed a 4th and 5th grade reading interventionist. Again, these students during COVID were just starting to learn to read. So it was really important that we prioritize that. So that is something that I'm still really committed to doing, and making sure that we don't, as you know, we have an override on the ballot for the end of this month. And a lot of these positions are at risk. And it's something that I'm just really dear to my heart, that I really am, just hoping that we don't have to make any of those sacrifices, because they are just, it's just going to be very, very devastating. Thank you.
Next up, Stevie.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Cherise Caldwell. You can call me Stevie. And I'm really thrilled to be here with you all today and have an opportunity to talk with all of you. Some of you I've already spoken with, so it's good to see you again. So I'm running for school committee because I look at what's happening on the national level, and I feel a sense of helplessness to make impact at a national level with policies. And the things that are happening are scary to me. They're frightening, the cuts to the Department of Education. And so running at a local level allows me an opportunity to make an immediate, meaningful impact, and to do 2 things that are very important to me, which is to help ensure that our students have a good education, and to try and help our students develop into good people, which I think we need in this world now more than ever. I am myself the product of a public school education. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I went to an underperforming high school and was lucky enough to get accepted into a good college. And when I arrived, I found that I was behind my classmates in terms of my academic achievements and my readiness for college. So I've been working really hard. worked really hard to catch up, and that was my biggest goal during my freshman year. And the experience has helped me appreciate education, helped me appreciate critical thinking and creativity, and has helped me pave a path through my life and get to a place that I want to be. It's helped me achieve a lot that I would never have thought, being a kid from inner city Cleveland, that I would have had. So education is super important to me, and it's very important that I am able to help our students shape their visions for their futures in a similar way. Not for nothing, I'm also pretty psyched that it would give me an opportunity to be involved in some way in my my eighth graders' school life, because I volunteered a lot at the elementary level. And then when you hit middle school and they don't want to see you anymore and you don't get to be involved, you don't get to go and read stories or do career day or anything like that. So I'm actually pretty excited to be doing something that is still impactful and still involved in my kids' education in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Nathan, you're up.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Agree with Stevie that they hit middle school and they no longer want to hang out with you anymore. It's devastating. Nathan Hutto, running for school committee. I've been introducing myself a lot lately, and I thought maybe I would start by telling a story instead this time. Like 20, more than 20 years ago, after college, I was in the Peace Corps, where I taught English and trained English teachers in Turkmenistan, and then worked overseas in humanitarian work for a little while, and came back to Boston and was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And what I did during that year was work in a Boston public school in Roxbury as a teacher's aide in a special education classroom. And it was an incredible year. I learned a lot. And it set me on a couple of courses. One was that a couple of months into my job, the teacher went out on parental leave, and we got a substitute teacher in the classroom. Her name at the time was Caitlin McCarthy. And that's where I met my wife and fell in love. And we are still married today and live in Milton with raising our two daughters, Elsie, who's at Pierce, and Alexandra, who's at Collicott. And we also fell in love with those kids. And I took away a lot that still, values that I still carry with me today. One is that all children are special and have unique gifts. Another is that all children can learn and grow. And another is that all children have an unbreakable right to a high quality education. And those are values I have had with me during my whole career, and that I will bring to the school committee. I'm currently the Chief Operating and People Officer at the Trustees of Reservations, and have been in senior executive roles in the nonprofit sector for quite a while. But before that, I spent about a decade working in education as a researcher, as a practitioner, as a consultant, and worked exclusively in school districts, both in Massachusetts and elsewhere, that were filled with students who did not have consistent access to high quality education. And I got to continue living out those values that I talked about a second ago. Working with superintendents, working with teachers, working directly with students, hearing their voice and their experience and bringing that with me on the job every single day. And that's what I'll do if you elect me to school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, the final opening question to Dan O'Neill.
Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm excited to announce my candidacy for the Milton School Committee. This is the third time that I'm running for this position, and that's how much I believe in this town, the school administrators, the teachers, but more importantly, the students. And then on the flip side, also the taxpayers of Milton. So my wife and I, Dahung, we have 3 children that are in the Milton Public Schools. Vivian is a junior Regina is a freshman, and George is in the 6th grade Pierce Middle School. So we've been in Milton for 15 years. I teach faith formation at St. Elizabeth's Church, and I volunteered as a Milton youth soccer coach for 6 years. I'm a Milton Town Meeting member for Precinct 9, and I'm also on the board, a state board of Massachusetts Illegal Tobacco Task Force. And I spent 14 years as president of United We Stand for Jason, which is a charity that my football teammates started to assist those living in the Lowell Healthcare Center with Huntington's disease. So professionally, I have over 29 years of government auditing. I'm currently the director of compliance and security for the Massachusetts State Lottery Commission. And I started and I oversee the lottery's anti-money laundering program, ensuring like the integrity of the lottery games and protecting the players themselves. So like I said, I'm a numbers guy, but I don't think that that's all that I would bring to the school committee. I'm a first-generation American. My mom was born in a displaced persons camp in Bielefeld, Germany, after World War II. My Polish grandparents were enslaved in the work camps in Nazi Germany. And my wife is also a political refugee from Vietnam. So my kids are first generation Americans as well. And my dad was a math teacher. He was the first person to graduate from our whole family with a college education from Boston College. He went through the ranks and became superintendent of schools, moved us up to New Hampshire, and I ended up going to Trinity College and getting a master's degree in public administration from Suffolk University in government finance and a post degree in accounting. So I think I bring a wealth of experience to this board.
Back in the corner.
And
Yeah, that's fine.
and I humbly ask for your vote this coming April 29th. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Julie Ferrulo, SEPAC board member, will be asking our second question.
SEPAC supports the upcoming override vote to maintain current levels of services for our students. If an override doesn't pass and the proposed cuts are in fact made to school staff and resources, what are you going to do to ensure the quality of education in Milton, including for those receiving special education services? And we will start with Stevie.
Thank you. So just going to go on record as saying that I support the override. I really hope that it passes. And in fact, I wish it were not just level service. I think there are improvements that we need made, but I would be happy to at least have that much come through. If for some reason the override doesn't pass, what I would personally try and do as a member of the school committee is, well, first of all, I would work on prioritizing our spending. So set funding priorities for the budget. And some of those priorities would be in our special education services. I think generally when we have cuts like this, our most vulnerable populations are the ones that suffer. That's our children with disabilities, our low-income students, our students of color. So for me, it would be super important to center those groups of students and try and make sure that we allocated funding for those programs for those kids equitably. I would look at ways to be creative in how we use our existing money. Ideas like regional collaboration, like sharing resources, collaborating on transportation, maybe sharing specialists, partnering with local businesses and community organizations. We have retired superintendents that will step back into service to help fill a need in a community. So I'm just thinking outside the box here, but I can't help but imagine that there are retired professionals in the special education space that we could potentially have helping out volunteering or, something along those lines. Like there are no bad ideas when you're working in a district that's strapped, and you need to be creative about the solutions that you have. Massachusetts is a state that really values its educational reputation. So they've made great strides with the Student Opportunity Act, I believe, which increased some of the funding that you get in Chapter 70 funds. But we could go back and ask for more. I mean, it might be difficult because in general, federal funding is drying up as well, but it's worth asking. And also looking at private grants, looking at applying for foundation funding. Essentially, I would work really hard to try and identify other areas that we could tap for funds, and I would work on a budget that prioritized our most vulnerable student population. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move to Nathan and then Anna. Nathan.
Julie, would you mind just repeating the second half of that question just to make sure I get it right?
Yeah, I'm just going to read the whole thing because I do talk fast. SEPAC supports the upcoming override vote to maintain current levels of services for our students. If an override doesn't pass and the proposed cuts are in fact made to school staff and resources, what are you going to do to ensure the quality of education in Milton, including for those receiving special education services?
Great, thank you, Julie. That would be a tough situation to be in. And for the record, I support the override very strongly. I'm sure everyone on this call understands what's at stake, but perhaps for those watching later, cuts to our school staff as a result of a failed override would include, I think, roughly 75 positions, cuts to services extensively, and there would be, a disproportionate number of those staffing cuts fall on special education, both interventionists and administrators and other staff. Be devastating. The first thing I would do, I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 6, and I would assume that at our town meeting starting on May 5th, we would be putting together another vote for another override. And I would be voting yes on that and doing whatever I needed to do as a school committee member to prepare the budget and the right override number that we think would pass, and would vote again at another election if that was happening, a special election to get another override passed. So that's number one. Number two, with such a tight budget situation, we would need to really double down on strong financial practices. And this is important no matter what, but even more important when you've lost $6 million you need to fund your school operations and district operations. So important finance practices that would need to absolutely happen in that situation would be to have stronger finance management practices with the select board, starting with resurrecting the select board finance committee and partnering with the school finance committee. Reviewing monthly budget to actuals on the school committee, posting those on our website so that the community can understand what we're spending our money on. And thank you, Joanna, start to build a multi-year goals-based budget, right? So those are like the financial pieces. I think a lot of Stevie's ideas are really good. We have to provide the special education services outlined in students' plans. And so that is a top priority for ensuring that students get the services that they are legally entitled to. I think it will be important to communicate with our community. If we have as a community rejected an override, communicate what we will lose and what we will have lost so that we can make this a shared sacrifice and not just a sacrifice on the part of the school committee, not just a sacrifice inside our classrooms, and not just a sacrifice for the parents and our most vulnerable students, but a sacrifice for our entire community. Thank you.
Dan, you're up.
Okay.
Oh, Dan, sorry.
Oh, Dan. Okay.
Is it me? Oh, okay.
It's you.
Okay, all right. So as everybody here in this forum and fellow candidates, we stated it publicly, we all are in favor of the override. But what if it doesn't pass? That's something that you actually do need a numbers guy on the school board in order to use what the budgeting tools, not only going forward, but you have to go back 5 to 7 years and start mapping out the expenses of all the accounts in order to see how expenses have grown with relationship to revenue. And then as you get a trajectory going on certain, you have 100 accounts in that budget, and you start to see which accounts are rising as opposed to which ones are flat funded. You start to make informed decisions that way around a budget. And then going forward, if that budget, I mean, if that override is not passed, it's going to be devastating, especially to the special needs programs and the students themselves. And it's near and dear to my heart because my son George is in that program, and I would do everything in my power to when you do an audit and you find duplicate spending and you find duplicate programs, you start to combine them together as a cost saving measure. I've done that for a living. 23 years at the Inspector General's offices. Whenever a school department or somebody, a state agency had difficulties in their budgeting, had difficulties in not forecasting their budgets correctly, they'd call us in and we would do what we call a courtesy budget analysis. That is something that is relatively straightforward, and I have the expertise to do that. I'd also look at all the opportunities that we have in procuring our contracts with the school department and seeing whether or not there's overlap with the town where we can get more of a bang for your buck, and especially in transportation. Also in utilities themselves, you'd have to go to, I mean, there was a huge deficit that we ran in budgeting our utilities. So reaching out to, you know, the power companies, the gas companies, in trying to get more of a town-wide effort to maybe even enter into a collaborative for better purchasing power. So those are the kind of areas that I would bring to this school board. So I thank you for the opportunity.
Anna.
Thank you. I also fully support an operational override for level service. I am glad that we were able to include some of the requests from our needs-based budget this past this budget cycle into the level service budget, so that we can push for an ELA curriculum, which has been outdated for a while. And as you know, like, not having the most up-to-date resources can also negatively impact our students. So that was something that has been very near and dear in my heart. So I'm glad that it's finally on our in the budget for this year. I also understand what we have on the line if this override doesn't pass. In fact, last year, I advocated for an override because I knew this was going to happen. We were coming into a contract negotiations year. We had a lot on the line. And if we had just, if we had prioritized that at the time, we wouldn't be looking at this upcoming date and saying, like, what, oh my goodness, like, this is going to be devastating. We could have planned ahead. And just like that is what I would like to do in terms of finance. We have put in some great practices within our finance team and working with the town finance department as well as the school finance department to kind of really align our practices and look at where we can, find inefficiencies and change those and figure out where we can find some cost savings without having major impacts to our programming and our staff as well. So that's something that we're going to be regularly looking at. And as Nathan mentioned, my immediate reaction, if it in the event of a failed override, is to go back for another override, because we absolutely need it. We need to set, really align our budget with our expenses and figure out how to move forward and really build back our reserves that we're used to having that we don't have anymore. So it really comes down to a lot of establishing a lot of good practices. I know at the finance committee, we've talked about having a town finance committee that includes members of the warrant committee and select board and school finance as well, so that we are constantly in discussion in terms of, so there are no surprises and everybody's on the same page about the efforts that we are making to improve our financial practices. And so those are things that we would continue to do and look at annually. There was a water bill issue at the high school that we looked at. So there are all these little things that now it almost needed to come to this for us to change the way we do things. So I look at this as a learning opportunity as well. And as devastating as it is, I do feel when I'm out and about talking to families that there is a lot of support for the override, which, and I understand. And Milton is such a great town. Like, it is amazing when you're out and about talking to families and residents. They are just like, we love our schools. They love the kids and want to support. So it's just a matter of really, I hope everyone comes out to support it. And, I'm hoping for the best, but at the same time, we're also starting conversations on next steps in case, so that we do have a backup plan, because that's something that I'm not gonna, wait to see what happens. So these conversations are already beginning to happen within our subcommittees. So I hope to continue those and, look at, potentially what we can do in terms of our programming that doesn't really impact our kids, but what can we, combine resources and so on.
It closes at, he would have to pick you up right from school, library, bookstore. It closes at 4. So
Thank you. Jenny Robertson, SEPAC board member, will be asking our third question, and I'll go ahead and paste the question into the chat to refer back to.
There are approximately 60 students who receive specialized services in out-of-district placements. The district estimates that over time, that number could be reduced by half if adequate space exists in our town and if the resources are available for programming and curriculum to meet their needs. It is significantly more costly to transport and pay tuition for a student out of district than to educate that student in Milton. Do you support the construction of a new school to make additional space available for all of our children? So we'll start with Nathan, and I'll remind you, it'll go Nathan, Dan, Anna, and Stevie.
Great. Thank you for the question, Jenny. I've heard from a number of school staff, parents about this exact thing, that our inability to provide space for education is forcing us to make choices we wouldn't otherwise make, such as educating some of our children out of their community. So yes, I do support more space for our students, do support a new school building. I like I mentioned, I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 6. And a couple of years ago, I voted on this issue, which began with the land swap. I voted yes on that issue. That laid the groundwork for being able to build a new school. And I'm grateful that the school building project has been accepted by the Massachusetts School Building Authority. For those watching, what that means is that the MSBA has determined that we do, in fact, have a facilities problem that likely needs more space, and that if approved by them and accepted by them, they will subsidize some of the construction costs, potentially up to, I think, 40%. So I'm grateful that they've accepted us, and I'm grateful that we have more time to go through this process so that we can make sure that our data is right, that we build the school building that we need, and importantly, that we can rebuild trust with our community. We just talked about an override, $9.5 million override. I want it to pass. That's asking a lot of our residents, and to fund the school, we will need to put a debt exclusion on the books. And that will be asking more from our residents. And I think that we need time to demonstrate that our public boards, including our select board and our school committee, have the financial capabilities and leadership and operational capabilities to be able to steward that money effectively. I am a chief operating officer, like I said, and have been working in this space for a long time. I have led the growth of organizations, and that's what we're talking about here, growth. I've opened new offices, have overseen capital projects, and currently do that work in my current job. And it's easy for these capital projects to get away from you, to exceed the spending limits you've set, and you have to watch every dollar that gets spent, every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out. Make sure that the receipts match the plans. I would, as a school committee member, that wouldn't necessarily be my job every day. Our job is to oversee the budget and our policies and our leadership, but I would make it a priority to make sure that this project, if it gets approved by our town government, by MSBA, that it is executed in a cost-effective and properly managed way. Thank you.
So thank you for that question. And I remember the land swap too, Nate. I think we became town meeting members at the same time. It was a heated debate, the Lamb Sisters land, and it was ultimately passed. And moving forward, there's a lot of discussion about how much is this school going to cost the town of Milton. And I remember the school building committee got up there and said it was going to cost around between $80 and $85 million. And I got up in town meeting and I said, you're looking at a building that's going to cost, at the time, it was 2 years ago, about $170 million. I probably put that at right now about $200 million school. And it's going to be a heavy lift, especially if the override does pass. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get the right team in place with the select board to go out and advocate for the construction of a new school to alleviate the overcrowding that we see, and especially for the special needs program and the 60 students the 30 students that could be housed if we had adequate, could be schooled if we had adequate spacing. So you're looking at a 30-year capitalization on a variable interest rate. We don't even know what the rates are going to be if we do get a debt exclusion for that school. So you're looking at a 45 reimbursement from the Massachusetts State Building Authority. And so you're looking at, an $85 million project over 30 years. You're looking at about $170 million. That doesn't even take into account site prep. I'd probably throw another 25 million on there, and then overruns and inflation factors. So I've had a lot of experience in auditing large school building construction projects and roadways throughout you name it. I've audited here. So I think, like I said, just to reiterate that you got to get the right people in place in order to make, the informed decisions, along with the new superintendent that we're going to hire. We got to have that leadership from the board and from the administration to make that push. So, thanks for the question.
Anna, you're next.
Okay, thank you. So as we all know, space has been a concern for a very long time in our district. During my second year, I joined the Facilities Advisory Committee, where I had the opportunity to really tour all 6 of our schools and kind of look at the space needs. And, it is very troubling when you see it in person, closets converted to offices. There's just a lot of space constraints, and there's only so much you could, really divide up spaces within an existing building. And so that was something that the facilities committee at the time took the charge of, like, hey, what can we do in our buildings to create space? And one of the things that we did was really push for that 4th floor attic space at Cunningham and Collycott to be renovated. And this past winter, we were able to, over the last 2 years, with the help of town meeting and our warrant committee and our capital committee and select board, really approve the funds needed to complete both those floors. Part of it will be completed in FY20 at the beginning of September of 2026, and the other one would be the following year. So we're just really, really excited about that, to help alleviate some of the space needs that our schools are really struggling with. And we looked at a lot of great ways to actually alleviate the space issues at some of the other schools. I mean, obviously this Cunningham and Collycott was low-hanging fruit in terms of the amount of work required, because the space already existed. In terms of although my primary focus has been immediate space solutions on the facilities advisory committee, I do respect the work that the school building committee has been doing for the last 7 years plus. And I really, really look forward to hearing back from the Massachusetts School Building Authority on the grants that they would be sharing with us. I'm excited that we're in the running for it, but I also want to be realistic with our current budget challenges. I mean, none of us knew this was happening, a few months ago. So this is what we're this is our priority right now. So this hurdle is, Nathan also mentioned, we have to get through this, and we have to wait and see what the outcome of this is going to be and the changes that we would have to make. But in the meantime, as we continue the work of the school building committee, I would like to see and review a detailed operating budget and staffing plan to really understand what is required to run a new building, and I want to be considerate of, our residents. A lot of them have mortgages that they are also paying off, and it's just a lot to put on families. So I want to be mindful of that. And at the same time, also, I mean, it's something that absolutely I feel that we need the space for our students, absolutely, for their well-being. But at the same time, I also want to be realistic in terms of the current situation that we're in. So, and so as a result, for right now, my priority is the override. After that, we will have to continue to work through the other issues. Thank you.
So my fellow candidates have, first of all, yes, I support the new school. My fellow candidates have covered the financial implications and challenges really thoroughly, so I don't feel the need to retread that. I instead would like to focus on what I believe the impact would be to our students in the special education program to come back in district when possible. So in doing my research, I've learned about the concept of least restrictive environment, and that the ideal is that you have our special education students in inclusion classrooms, learning alongside their peers, and that sending them out of district is the last place on the path. It's the other end of that extreme. And I can imagine that most parents don't want to send their kids an hour commute both ways if they can help it, right? And most parents want their kids to be able to be alongside their peers, participate in the extracurricular activities, and have that whole student experience. Go to school with kids that they will see on the weekends outside, or interact with in other ways. So I think that bringing more of those out of district placements in district, because we have the space to do so, is beneficial both to our special education students. It's also beneficial to the other kids in the classroom, because they get to learn empathy. They get to learn, they get to knock down the stigma of being a special education student. Quick anecdote to how important it is to have these experiences and have this exposure. In my company, we had an engineer who had a visual impairment. And my company is fully remote. So we're always either on Zoom or we're in Slack, mostly in Slack. And we're engineers, so we're silly. We like to post GIFs all the time. And yes, I'm pronouncing it GIF, if that's controversial to anybody here. So we post GIFs all the time. And it was part of our company culture that we would always reply in thread with a description of the GIF. And it became almost like a competition or badge of honor, like how detailed you could get with the description. But it was part of what we did because that was the culture that we had. And from that point on, like that has become a common thing that I do on my personal social media. So if I post something on Blue Sky, if I post a GIF, it is second nature to me to go in and add some alt text to that and make it descriptive. And that's the kind of thing that comes from being exposed in that way. So I think that's beneficial to, their cohort is beneficial to our special education students, is beneficial to the teachers to have the experience of teaching along all those levels. And it speaks to the MTSS. I forget what the acronym stands for, but I know it's like a multi-tiered system of support, right? They get to exercise that in the classroom as well. And that's beneficial to our professional development of our teachers. So that's my answer. I support the school and it's really great for our students.
Thank you. Our final question for the school committee candidates is, with the federal government seemingly focusing efforts on removing equity and inclusion programs from local schools and other federally supported programs like public health and nutrition programs, how do you think Milton should support our most vulnerable populations? We'll start with Dan and then Anna, Stevie, and Nathan.
Okay, so the federal government, I could just say the Trump administration has been using tactics, especially here in New England with Maine, about disbanding their DEI programs, or not going to get federal funding. So I think that the way that Massachusetts should play out that tactic of the administration is to invoke the 1964 Civil Rights Act and fight back against stripping any fundings for programs that are currently funded by the DEI. So it's a big, complicated issue and wrapped up in a complicated question that I think the Healy administration and the people that are in her cabinet are working its way through, especially with Attorney General Andrea Campbell, and finding ways in order to address the administration's for lack of a better word, and we all know what it is, it's a crackdown on DEI. So if you lose a lot of that funding, it's a 4-year administration, it's going to be devastating to not only the state itself, but obviously it's going to filter down to the town of Milton. So again, it's almost akin to having another override. You have to make that decision on what are you going to cut if federal funding is withdrawn from the state of Massachusetts, if legal lawsuits and tactics are not successful. So as a school member and as you have the ability to, you have some tools in your toolkit. You have, budget, and you have policy making. So we're gonna have to make a lot of decisions on whether or not we could find funding if it is cut. So like I said, super complicated question. We don't know if the cuts to the state is gonna actually happen. I know that like I said, Maine is going through it right now. A lot of states have actually disbanded their DEI programs in order to retain funding. So it's an unknown, and it's really tough answering hypotheticals. But for me, myself, my family, my wife's a person of color, so are my children. I'll fight the best I can for the school district. So thank you.
Anna, you're next.
I know there are huge concerns about the impacts to come. What I'm trying to do as a school committee member is to stay as up to date on the information. In fact, I just signed up today for an MASC webinar on the topic. In the meantime, we've also started discussing these topics at this topic in particular at our meetings. Our Assistant Superintendent of Finance, who's been with us for a little under a year, has been closely monitoring any developments, and so that we can plan and look at what the impact to us would be. And in the meantime, with the override, I'm hopeful that we can build up special ed reserves and, build up our reserves so that we can really focus on, kind of covering some of those cost increases. And then really just planning for the unexpected is really, really helpful. I mean, just kind of being aware and not kind of waiting for it to happen, but just thinking about it and just planning and forecasting and looking at the trends and, and just keeping up to date on the information is so important. In terms of DEI, that's something that I'm very passionate about as a person of color living in this town. It's something that is very close to my heart. I do feel like, rather than being afraid of what is out there and what's speculations and so on and so forth, I think we have a commitment to our district in terms of really changing what that program is to be Milton specific, right? And I think that's something that I've had conversations with the superintendent about how to kind of change it so that it is more inclusive, inclusive of special ed, inclusive of all different cultures represented in Milton. I think that's so important to have so that everybody feels like they belong. I personally, dealing with my own daughter who comes home every, as mentioned in a recent school committee meeting, that my daughter comes home every week saying, I wish I was an Indian, and that's where I feel like we can really, really change that program so that it feels like every student here belongs. And that's something that I'm really passionate about spearheading. I recently joined the Pierce DEIB committee a few months back, and that's something that I really want to focus on, is bringing all the different groups, because there's so many great volunteers in each of these committees, and I want to bring them together and really learn from each other on where we can make improvements, and really just maybe even take it on as a volunteer effort. If we can't support it within our current budget restraints. So that's something, again, as I mentioned, is very passionate to me, but I really do want to make it better. And that's something I'm committed to doing. Thank you.
Stevie, you're next.
Okay. So I feel, I'm sorry, I'm reading the question again. So I think that this question speaks directly to what I said at the very beginning about why I'm running for local office. Because I want to be a part of protecting our community, and coming together as a community is the best way that we can protect each other from harmful policies that come from the national level. So for me, I believe that we can still, despite what's happening at the national level, despite those threats and those cuts, we can still exercise equity in our funding and how we arrange our budgets in the programs that we decide to put money into. Even if we're on a tight budget, we could still be mindful of where we put our money. I think we can also strengthen our school-based nutrition and health programs. We could partner with nonprofits. I think that we can make sure that our teachers get professional development on matters of inclusion and equity and diversity, and keep that train going forward. We've got a good track record right now of implementing those programs and supporting our students and our teachers with those programs, and there's no reason to stop that. I also think that in the case of something like that happening, it's important to support our families, to give support to our community. So shoring up our mental health services, providing information sessions to our families so that they can keep abreast of what's going on and they know what we as a community and what we as a district are doing. Transparency would be a super key to helping everyone be on the same page, getting feedback from the community, input from the community about what their concerns are and what they would like to see us do. And I think that, yeah, and also, making, again, this effort to include our kids in the special education program into, creating those inclusive classrooms would also help us all be sort of protective of each other in a very bad situation. So again, it comes back to us working as a community, coming together, prioritizing those things, even if they're being attacked at a national level, and communicating with each other. Thank you.
And finally, Nathan.
Thank you for the question. I guess to start, I come in with the belief that if you want to live in a free country, you have to act like you live in a free country. And the question was, how should we support our most vulnerable students and people in our school district? And that begins by making a commitment not to change our values. And I am committed to that, to upholding my own personal values and working with school committee members in our district and our community to uphold our values. What is happening in the federal government is very scary for many people. It's very confusing for many people, maybe for everybody. DEI initiatives are under attack. Accessibility is under attack. Core rights related to disability protections are under attack, and it's not clear what the federal government will or will not do on these really critical issues. And so it's confusing to everybody. I have been a senior executive leading finance and operations for years and have dealt with the impact of changing political winds. These are the strongest winds. And I'm currently navigating this at my own workplace right now, where we rely on federal funds, where we have workplace policies meant to protect our employees and our visitors. And it's, we're navigating a very confusing situation. I think it's helpful for school committee members to think about this through the lens of our core work, which is around policy, budget management, and hiring our district leaders. So from a policy perspective, I agree with Stevie that transparency on what we're doing is essential. That to me is the cornerstone of fairness. When people have an equitable level of information, then you have fairness in what people understand, making sure that we have policies that work. I agree with Anna that what we have in place is good, but that it needs to evolve with how the district evolves and how things evolve over time. If we lose federal funds, which we do have some of, we will need to make, again, challenging budgetary choices and go through scenario planning to understand. We should be doing that now, understanding the various scenarios that will play out in the event that we lose federal funds. And finally, we have an opportunity to hire a superintendent. And I'm glad we have one in place now, but when we look for our permanent superintendent, I will be looking for somebody who is an effective policymaker and who has successfully worked with government authorities to the advantage of our school district. I'm excited to work on this as a school committee member. I think it's some of our most important work. Thank you.
Thank you. With the remaining time left, we're going to invite each candidate to give a very brief 1-minute closing statement. We'll start with Anna and then Stevie, Nathan, and Dan.
I'm Anna Varghese. I currently serve on the school committee. I'm coming in on my the end of my 3rd year. I've really enjoyed serving on the committee. I've learned a lot from my other committee members and from the leadership team and the principals and the building leaders. I've learned so much. I've learned from families. And every time a parent writes in, it's so important to get that perspective. I've had so many great emails that really open my eyes to things that aren't necessarily shared at our table, but it really just gives me a different perspective on things. And it really helps me kind of weigh my decision on each, because the decisions that we make at our board really impact what happens tomorrow. So I always encourage families to write in about their concerns, and I really take the time to process that and weigh those and in my decision making. So I appreciate that. I am running for re-election, and the vote is at the end of this month, and I hope I can continue to serve on school committee. And it has been a pleasure. Thank you for having me this evening.
So I have learned so much in my journey in preparing for this forum. I really appreciated the educational materials that were provided, and I went on a super deep dive with a lot of these concepts. These were new things to me. I'm a lifelong learner, so this was a lot of fun for me. I have a ton of tabs open in my browser for all these links. My whole goal, my focus is student-based. I want the best outcomes for all of our kids, regardless of their means, their abilities, their backgrounds, any of that stuff. They all deserve to have access to an excellent education. And that means they need excellent resources, they need support, they need to be seen as whole people, and they need to be treated as their whole individual selves. And that's what's important to me. And I believe even in the challenges that we're going to have with the budget, that making decisions with that at the forefront of our minds is paramount to keeping our district one that enables students to have positive outcomes. Thank you.
Nathan is next.
Sorry, I thought I clicked unmute. I was talking to my daughters the other night about why I'm doing this. I was explaining to them that I'm doing it for Milton because I love this town. I'm doing it for them and for everyone else's children. I want to close by letting you know what you can expect from me on the school committee. There's a couple of things. One is a bias towards action. We are in a unique time where our school committee will be needing to make decisive action and produce results for the benefit of our students and our teachers and our community. I'm focused on consensus building within our school committee itself and across our public board so that we can get more done. And finally, I'm committed to listening to people on the school committee, to people on other boards, and especially to people within our schools and our community. I am an expert on some things, and I've shared that with you tonight. An expert on leading and building organizations, but I'm not an expert on everything. There's no way any school committee member can be. And the only way you build that expertise is by listening to other people with an open mind and being willing to change your mind when someone convinces you that they're right and you're not. And I look forward to having my mind changed while I'm on the school committee. Thank you.
And Dan.
I want to thank all those here in attendance for this special forum, and especially my fellow candidates. I've run a lot against a lot of other candidates, but I think this race has really taught me a lot about myself and about my family and about the Milton schools, the students, the administrators, the teachers, and the community itself. The current board is comprised of a lot of like-minded people, which is fantastic. I come from a different field. I come from the government auditing and financial field. So I think that I can bring a unique perspective. And I'm a huge underdog person. I always root for the underdog. And in a way, I think that certain students in Milton's public schools are underdogs, and I want to do everything in my power to fund the right programs that are measured, that have measured outcomes, that are determined to be successful. And the only way you can do that is you have to historically go back and look at the numbers and look and measure the results, and so you can forecast not only a budget, but you can forecast fantastic outcomes for our children. So I hope on April 29th, I'll get one of your votes there. Give me your vote. Give me a look. All right. Give me a third look. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you all to all the school committee candidates who have joined us tonight. We really appreciate your time and your commitment. We know this is a tremendous undertaking. We wish you the best on April 29th. Whatever the outcome, we look forward to your continued engagement on our issues. So at this point, we'll turn our attention to the candidates for Select Board. Just as a reminder of the rules, Joanna McCarthy will be keeping time for our candidates' answers, and those answers should be kept to 3 minutes apiece. Candidates, please keep an eye on that on her window, and she'll indicate a warning to wrap up your remarks. We will alternate the order to which our questions will be answered by the 3 candidates joining us this evening. And we ask that you keep this discussion focused on policy and your vision for education in Milton. So once again, the 3 candidates for Select Board joining us this evening are Winston Daly, Megan Hegarty, and Paul Hogan. We will kick off this round of questioning with a familiar question, but maybe a little bit of a spin. So if you could tell us why you've decided to run for Milton Select Board and provide specific examples of your commitment to supporting our schools. We'll start with Paul, then followed by Megan, and then Winston. Paul, the floor is yours for the next 3 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you to Milton SEPAC. It's a very important group and advocacy group in the town. My name is Paul Hogan, and I am running for Select Board. I came to Milton in 1995, and I've raised 4 daughters here, all attending the Milton Public Schools, and 2 of them with IEPs throughout their time here. Prior to coming to Milton, I was the head of the government of Watertown, Massachusetts. I was chair of the city council there, and I'm one of the few people in the Commonwealth that has served on 2 school committees. I served on the Watertown School Committee, and I served on the Milton Town School Committee. In 2004, when I joined the Milton School Committee, the town of Milton school department was under probation by the Massachusetts Department of Education for not properly implementing IEPs. And at that time, we had over 80 out-of-district placements. So then at that time, we had just hired a new superintendent, Mag Jaffoon, if you remember her. And she was quite schooled in special education. She was a champion of inclusion. And in that time, we started a program to have inclusion on the Milton Public Schools. It wasn't easy, and there was some resistance from many parents, but we were able to reduce the out-of-district placements to below 60, I believe. It's been a while, and bring inclusion to the classroom. I also served for 10 years on the Milton School Building Committee. I was on the committee during the time that we built the 6 schools, and as a lawyer, I was helping, and sort of enforce the contracts and deal with problems and change orders. I also became chair of the facility subcommittee for the schools, and brought some improvements there. And that subcommittee became the town facilities committee. Bill Ritchie, who was our chair, became the first director of the facilities subcommittee. One of the things that I think is important in SPED is teacher training, reaching out to different resources. I know that when I was on the school committee, I was able to get Dr. Florence Lay from the Mass General, an expert on dyslexia, to come and teach teach the teachers on recognizing dyslexia at an early stage. As you know, dyslexia, if it's recognized early, can be corrected quite well through the Wilson program. I think the town is facing some important decisions. I think I have a broad-based experience, and that's why I'm running to bring that experience and to try to solve some of these issues. I like to pride myself in listening to all sides on issues and make the best decision for the town. Thank you.
Paul, thank you. Megan, you're up.
Hi, my name's Megan Haggerty and I'm a candidate for Select Board. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm running because I love this town. It's where I'm raising my two kids, Ben, who's 13. Actually, he'll be 13 on Tuesday, and Josie, who is 6 and is a kindergartner at Tucker. You know, I got into this race because we're at a pivotal moment in our town, and I think nationally as well. With the override coming up, you know, the uncertainty there, the uncertainty that could happen as a result, the uncertainty of the potential federal cuts to Massachusetts and to education funds in general. And just as a mom, I really want to bring my skills in budgeting and in leading organizations through uncertainty to the table. I've been a member of the Tucker, Glover, and Pierce PTOs as a room parent or helping to organize fundraisers. I was doing the math earlier, and I realized that by the time Josie graduates from Milton High in 2036, I will have spent 19 years as a mom in the Milton Public Schools. So I've been with many of you for a long time, and we still have over a decade to go together. So I really want to be on the Select Board to be an advocate for our schools and for our kids. And I just also want to say that, you know, I am really grateful for the work that SEPAC does in our school communities and for the impacts that it has, just in terms of the personal impacts that it's had on me and my son. When I first became a mom in the Milton Public Schools, I was a single mom, and I lived in Dorchester while Ben's dad lived in Milton. And I really worried that Ben and I were going to be outsiders in our community at Glover. And my worst fears never materialized. And I really believe that it was because Ben was always part of the co-taught classrooms where he and his peers really learned a lot about acceptance and inclusion and celebrating everybody's differences. You know, and just having the resources of the adjustment counselors and amazing teachers like Mary McCarthy and principals like Karen McDavitt. So I just think I have a lot of good experience to offer the taxpayers and the parents in Milton. I really know how to get things done. And, you know, I think that the resources of this town need to work for all of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Megan. Winston, you're up.
You know, I take all this time, and when I unmute, I clear my throat. Ridiculous. My name is Winston Daly, and I'm a candidate for the Select Board here in Milton. I just want to share a little bit about my background first before speaking about schools and our young people. I started my career in finance in Boston, working a lot of big banks in institutional investing. I did that for about 13 years, and I now remain a bit in the finance space where professionally I am a nonprofit consultant working with youth-serving organizations, but then I'm also an angel investor in the tech and startup space where we fund early-stage companies. In regards to our families and schools, I will say that was my entry point into Milton. I left my career in finance after about 13 years, chiefly because I wanted to work with young people. I began that through sports and then became a tutor, mentor, working in high schools and various schools around Boston, really thinking of the idea of being the person that is there for other young people that wasn't there when I was there. And so when I came to Milton and my daughter started in Tucker, I realized a lot of sort of differentiation in Milton. So I began working in the schools, joined the site council. I started doing math enrichment in the morning. I became a part of a community that brought parents together. We started the Tucker basketball program, which continues now. That started when my daughter was in 4th grade. She's now a junior at the high school, so 7 years strong. And the backbone of Tucker basketball was that our young people and families did not feel that they were being heard or seen in Milton. So they would not join community events. They would not join the leagues, or if they did, they would stay for a week or two because it was not a place that was inclusive, not a place that was supportive. And so we said, let's do this at the schools where all of our young people feel that they can play together, that they have a space where they can express themselves. And it's been one of the best things that's happened at Tucker, I think, over the years. So every principal that's been there has asked us to come back. All the families find spaces with each other, and we bring all of our young people together, regardless of gender, regardless of ability. And we also got all of the sports leagues to begin coming to the schools to work with the families and getting them signed up, doing hand-to-hand registrations, actually building a relationship before you ask families to walk out onto that field. And I think I've also had an experience with all of the principals across town, all of our superintendents over the last 10 years, and speaking with them about how do you provide high quality programs, not only for your highest achievers and your highest resource students, but for everyone. And I think the quality of a school district is really about what do you do for all of your young people. It is not enough only for the young people that are already high achieving, the ones that are already showing great promise. A school is really dependent on what do you do for those who may need a little bit more of a push, who may need a little bit more of a handhold, the kid that needs more time? And I think it is on us as adults to create that space that allows our young people to thrive. We cannot ask our young people to create the programs that they need. It is on us as adults to fund and build. And that has been my dedication to the schools and the principals and the administrators I've worked with, as well as the parents I've worked with here in Milton. I hope to continue that on the select board. I think I'm like 10 seconds on the job.
Thank you. We'll take that time back. Julie Ferrula will be asking your second question.
As you know, a duty of the select board and its members is fiduciary responsibility for all town finances. Please explain to us your vision of the specific actions the select board can and should take to satisfy this responsibility. And how do you plan to work with the town administrator and department heads, including the school department and its new administration, in doing so? We're going to have Megan, Winston, and then Paul.
Okay, thank you for that question. You know, I think some of the actions that the select board can take to meet the fiduciary responsibility to the town really, for me, starts with getting us on a path where we have a better articulated vision for the town and where we want to go. You know, really strengthening what our, 5-year, 10-year objectives are, in starting to plan better and implement better. I think a big piece of getting there will be to reconvene the finance subcommittee, which should include members of the warrant committee, the planning board, as the key department that helps with revenue generation, and representatives from the school committee. as, you know, a big driver of our town's expenditures. So I think that, you know, where we've been lacking lately is in coordination across these bodies and collaboration across these bodies. I'm a chief operating officer of a large organization, and I can tell you, and much of my day-to-day work is in strategic business planning and getting folks rowing together in the same direction. We are at a critical time in our town where we must start doing this. We must have a common vision, and we must, you know, Nathan was mentioning, I was listening to the school committee before, we must be scenario planning, and we must be, you know, putting any divisiveness to the side, and we must be working together to move forward. Thanks.
That's me.
Yes, Winston.
I think first the override is key. Getting the override passed. I think secondarily it is us. I think us thinking much more creatively about our finances. I think the set aside that's within this new budget of starting with $700,000 for special education specifically is great. I think that shows a lot of forethought and planning. You know, unfortunately, it took kind of this crisis for us to get to that point, but it's great to see that we have that ability to be creative and think ahead. I think it's also about us getting together. I'm going to reiterate, just like I think all the candidates tonight will, is putting together that school finance committee and coming back with a renewed fervor. Not just saying that we're going to put the committee back together, but that we are starting to look at our expenditures, places where we can reduce duplication, and places where we can also reduce some of our expenditures. I think in a lot of the materials and the things we've talked about special education is the out-of-district placements are incredibly expensive. And where can we help our young people and our families within district? Have we been sort of giving up a bit early on our families and our children with the special education designation and sending them out of district? What are the services that we can provide here in district that allow us not only cost savings, but allow us to be a more inclusive community? I think that's an important piece that we begin to talk about here in Milton is, are there points where we have simply just decided that we do not need to provide more? That is easier to take, we can take the easy way out. So I think on our financial, we're talking about maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, getting to commercial revenue. And in the meantime, what are we doing to provide the backing for our schools and the rest of our departments? So I think there's a place of sitting with the town administrator, speaking with him about his charge and what he has seen in the numbers. I think coming into the select board allows us to come with fresh eyes and more creative ideas, and not saying this is how we've always done it, but thinking how can we do this much better? That we have our community asking us for a different path forward, and that we cannot simply roll out the exact same plan and what's gotten us here before. And I think it's also about us being communicative and transparent with our families, our community, about what we're working on, not just in the meetings, but also, you know, convening some of these meetings before there is a crisis. I've heard a lot from our families that they don't feel that they're being heard, that they're showing up to the meetings and being taken as almost an obstacle, not the idea of collaboration. So I want to pull our families and our students together in an effort in the spirit of collaboration. What do those families know about us getting grants, about services we can provide, where we cannot say that we know everything all at once, and that we're working with every department and pulling folks together to bring our collective talents to the table so we can provide the best resources for Milton.
My turn. If elected to the select board, I would attempt to find a way to have better partnership between the select board and the school department and the school committee. Mr. Milano, the town administrator, I've observed him, and he seems to be very good at budgeting and forecasting. And one of the things that I would promote is that Mr. Milano work closely not only with the select board, but also with the school superintendent to try to do better with two things really. real-time knowledge of the financial condition of all town departments, particularly the schools, and then forecasting. We need to know what our expenses are going to be down the road, 5 years, 10 years, and we have to build models to prepare for that. I did serve on the school finance committee when I was on the Milton school committee, and I was able to see the budgets, know the details in the process, and work closely with the department heads. And I like to bring that back. It doesn't seem to be there anymore. I worked very closely when I was on the school committee with John Phelan, the current interim candidate for school superintendent. And I'd love to sit down with John again to begin a process of looking at the numbers and seeing what we can do. Your question goes to fiduciary responsibility. And I think as a select board member, I think that three things come to mind about fiduciary responsibility. One is transparency. We want the public to know where the money is going, where it's coming from, what competing needs are looking for that money, and how the decisions are made to spend that money. Second is accountability, to stand forth and be accountable for the actions that we take and the money. And the third thing would be the forecasting that I just mentioned. So those are three critical aspects of, I believe, fiduciary responsibility. Another thing to think about is that if Mr. Milano is able, as he administrates the town, to save money in particular departments, that money shouldn't just stay in that department. We should think about promoting the idea of trying to do things as efficiently as possible across the town. And whenever there's savings, we would have ready a sort of needs list. And certainly the schools would be, it's our biggest department. It's our biggest agency. And certainly we should, if we save money in another part of the town, and we should try to use it over at the school committee. So those are the things I think about when you ask about fiduciary responsibility. I think a select board member has a pivotal role, and I'd like to work to have more cross work between the select board and the school committee. And being a former chair of the school committee, knowledgeable about that, I think I could be helpful with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny Robertson will be asking our third question.
Regardless of the outcome of the upcoming override vote, it has become clear that town budgets over the next 3 fiscal years will likely not incorporate needs-based requests from departments, including the schools, and only have the capacity to support level service funding, if that. How will you work to ensure that Milton Public Schools, an integral part of our community, will sustain its excellence in educating our students, 4,400 residents who can't vote for you, given the challenging fiscal landscape on our horizon? We'll start with Winston, then Paul, then Megan.
Just give me 1 second. I'm just looking at the question in the chat, just make sure. I'll say, Jenny, as I heard your question, what came to me first was, I'm gonna be optimistic. I'm gonna be hopeful. I'm gonna be hopeful that if I'm elected on April 29th, that I'm a part of making sure that we're not only at level service, that we are able to fund what we need and above. And that is our goal in the entire time as we're speaking about being fiscal responsibility and being fiduciaries and conducting the town's business, which is really the charge of the select board. I think there's a lot of space in there for Milton to get, I'm going to keep saying this word again, very creative in the way not only that we generate revenue, but the way that we spend. I think perhaps there are a lot of stones that have been unturned that we need to look into. I'm also hopeful that we get in compliance with the MBTA Communities Act so that we are eligible for funding from the states. I think if you look at the current climate, we're going to be relying a lot more on state funding and state partnerships than we will at the federal level. And I think it's really important that Milton puts itself in a proactively positive situation with anything that may happen with us with the state. In the other spaces, again, I will reiterate that I think Mr. Milano's plan of putting money aside for the special education fund is a key moment for us here in Milton, that we are thinking ahead and we are looking to see what may happen down the line. And that the schools to me are the most important aspect of Milton. It is why we're here. It is what drives our home values. It is what drives our quality of life. And I will say this as many times as possible, that is the space that we need to look first in terms of thinking about our families and our community and what that means. To live in a town that has underserved schools and underserved families, that is nothing that any of us want. So generating new revenue, laying out commercial possibilities. We have the possibilities for new restaurants, possibilities for new buildings, possibilities for new revenue coming in, that we should be mapping that out, assigning how that's going to be mapped into the schools, and so that we are not surprised by anything that comes in the next 2 years where we are possibly facing a huge economic downturn. So I think that proactivity and working with the town administrator as well as the state to find where we can get extra funding so we are not simply trying to manage our district on a shoestring budget is key. I think for too long, Milton is kind of teetered on hoping that our overrides would work and not thinking that we should think in the mindset of abundance and surplus, and how do we continue to serve our families, not simply thinking about austerity and cutting budgets along the way.
The town of Milton, reliance on the residential tax base is kind of problematic. This is a good question. Just relying on the tax base puts a great challenge on the finances of the community. As I mentioned, I served before as the town council president of Watertown. That's sort of the mayoral position they have over there. And we never had an override in Watertown. That's because we had a tremendous tax base through business and commercial. I agree with Winston that one of the things that we have to do is see what we can do about increasing the commercial tax base to bring in more money ourselves, given the state of affairs with the federal government. And that is happening, and I would be for that. There's a overlay district plan for East Milton. And one of the things that the goals of that program is to have 3-story buildings, but the first story is for commercial properties. And that'll help bring in some commercial business. I think it is important to be prudent with the money and to work together with the town and the town administration. And as I said in my prior answer to the question, I'd like to see the town administrator work very closely with the school department on financial forecasting and that kind of thing. As a former member of the school finance committee, we tried to do that, forecast ahead and look to see what's available. The schools are really one of the best assets in Milton. And we have to work very hard to keep it at that level. That's what's attracted families to come here. That's what attracted me to come here in 1995 to raise my children. And when I was walking out on the street and knocking on doors, a parent with a very young child in hand said, you had your opportunity to raise your children here. You should support this override for us. And I agree 100% with that. So, I do support the override, but I agree with the intent of the question is that we have to do something much better about our fiscal health here in Milton and fiscal forecasting, trying to find other ways to save money, to increase money, and then make sure that it gets to the schools to keep it at a level that we've all been used to and we all want to keep going. Thank you.
Okay, so I might sound a little bit redundant with my colleagues here tonight because I think they both have good ideas. I will say that, if I'm elected to the select board, the way to ensure that Milton maintains educational excellence is to continue to center the schools at the heart our budget and everything that we do. You know, so it requires a strong understanding of our priorities. I think, you know, given the fiscal environment that we're in, you know, even if the override passes, we have to be proactive and we have to begin for planning for various scenarios now. I mean, it's what I'm currently in the middle of doing right now at the state, just understanding the federal landscape. What are the 3 most likely scenarios and how do we drive at, you know, being able to put ourselves in a place where we're in the best position regardless of what happens. So that requires, you know, a lot of focus from the select board, a lot of focus from the town administrator. You know, I really do agree that we need a tighter alignment between the school department and the rest of town government. You know, and I think that what we also need to do, what I've always done in situations of uncertainty, you know, I was the chief administrative officer in the MassDOT Highway Division during the COVID pandemic. And, you know, when your back's against a wall and you're in these types of situations, you really have to leverage the creativity, the understanding, and the expertise of the staff and listen to them and embrace that in your planning and your way forward. You know, given the tight fiscal constraints, I do believe that we have to do everything we can to maximize the amount of local aid and state grant opportunities we have. So I think we need to come into compliance with the MBTA Communities Act as soon as we can. I think we need to get out of that situation, you know, while still reflecting the needs of the whole town. And I think we need to get real about, you know, pursuing more opportunities for commercial tax revenue in this town. Now is the time, and we don't have any longer to spare. Thanks.
Thank you. And our final and fourth question is, with the federal government seemingly focusing efforts on removing equity and inclusion programs from local schools and removing funding for other federally supported programs like public health and nutrition programs, how do you think Milton should support our most vulnerable populations? We'll start with Paul and then Megan and Winston.
Thank you. Well, I think we should continue with the programs that we have. We have a pretty good track record, I believe, in establishing some of these programs. And irregardless with what happens with the federal government, there are some things that we can do locally to keep that going. I also would like to maybe work with other cities and towns with school departments and similar needs to see if we can share resources or advocate together at the State House for more funding or more programs that we'd like to have. My old law partner, Ken Gordon, is the chair of the Joint Education Committee in the State House. So I would have access to find out, I would try to talk to him about what types of things are available, and then what other cities and towns are doing, and what is the state doing to try to maintain some of these programs and initiatives, given the loss of any federal funding. So I would try to key in on that. I do think it's very important. The other thing is to try to see if there's nonprofits or organizations that provide services at no cost or low cost to continue some of these efforts. So those are the things that I would think about doing. I think it would be a challenge to all of us. We've talked about the finances and the difficulties just on its own. And with these particular programs, with any loss of funding, we need to somehow replace it or find some other alternative means. Thank you.
And Megan is next.
Sorry, I had that panic moment of finding the microphone. So you know, in that, you know, I mean, for me, that's a pretty terrifying event, that, you know, is more of a likelihood than, you know, it really should be. You know, I think first of all, I think that we have strong values in this town, where, you know, I'm grateful that I'm here. I'm grateful that we're all here, and that, you know, I do think that equity and inclusion is much more of a shared value. And you know, I would stand with my neighbors, you know, to stay our ground and to, you know, prioritize that as a value, throughout our education system and throughout the whole of government. So, you know, I think, you know, even though it might be financially challenging, we would need to continue to prioritize these programs, and, you know, find efficiencies wherever possible to stretch our dollar as far as it can go, to support these programs. You know, and as Paul mentioned, I think it would be important to, you know, identify like-minded, you know, towns, school systems, state partners, to find those partnerships and move forward. And I also think that, you know, I mentioned this before, but, you know, in times of crisis, you know, we sometimes have our best ideas and our best, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So I would want to work with the new school superintendent. I would hope that we would work with the new school superintendent to, make sure that we're paying attention to the educators and the staff who are on the front lines with students, and really leverage the creativity, of our staff, of our parents, and our entire school community. Thanks.
So this is a question that's very important to me. So in my day job in nonprofit work, I work with youth serving and family serving organizations. And a big piece of what we discuss and what I work with organizations on is creating inclusive spaces and also diversity, equity work, and how do you serve those in your community most in need. So I am not comfortable with sacrificing anyone in our community, particularly the most vulnerable, regardless of funds being taken away or folks telling us that certain things are illegal. I believe equity is what we believe, and if it is our value system, it will be embedded in all the work that we do. It doesn't matter if anyone has the title of equity coach or if anyone has the title of DEIB director. It is important for us that it is embedded in our school system throughout everyone, from our superintendent, whoever that will be, down to our newest teacher, that the way that we engage with our students and the way we engage with our families is embedded with the practices of equity. It does not matter what the labeling is. I care about the work and the care that people are putting into our families. Around the community, I think we've had a lot of great efforts in that. A lot of you may know me from being one of the founders of MARC, the Milton Anti-Racist Coalition, which was put together around families of color in this town who felt that their students were not getting a fair shake at the middle school. The schools had been tagged by the state for being unfair in suspension practices for kids of color. We were able to work with our principals and our superintendent about changing those numbers, and those numbers have reversed. And that was everyone coming together and having the understanding of the experience that folks were having and how do we go about changing it. I think our community partners have been great in the spaces of helping our vulnerable families, the restaurants that gave out food during COVID, the fact that we have kids who no longer have to pay for lunch. The Milton Residence Fund is a key for us as well in the way that we conduct and live here in Milton. So I think that this is about how we embed our values, how it is within everything we do. It was within our discussions. If we are going to lose funding, that we are not saying we're going to find another way to make sure our families are supported, and that is not something that we are willing to give on. And that is something that I'm going to stand with on the select board or in any role I will have here in Milton.
Thank you. With the remaining time left, we're going to invite each candidate to give a very brief closing statement. Please limit to about 1 minute each. We'll start with Megan and then Winston and Paul.
Okay, well, I just want to start by thanking everybody on the call tonight for the work that they do and for the impact that you have on all of our lives in the Milton Schools community. I am just grateful that, you know, I get to be a mom in the Milton Public School systems. And, you know, I really want to prioritize our kids and our school system moving forward. I'm running because I think that we need people in leadership on the select board who have executive leadership skills, who know how to navigate uncertainty and, you know, the current organizational climates in government agencies. You know, I'm actually recognized nationally as somebody in, you know, among state DOTs who knows how to do scenario planning, who knows how to navigate uncertainty, who knows how to look at an organization's capabilities and get us to another place. So I really just want to bring that to the town, you know, and I humbly ask for your vote on April 29th. Thanks.
First, apologies for my technical issues. I lost my camera halfway through. I hope that all went well for the recording. I will say simply, my career has been in two spaces. I've been in finance and investments and in profit and risk-taking and returns. And I've been in a space of community, the place of family, equity, access, and how do we come together and pull together and work together. And I think that is the unique view that I bring to the select board. My idea is not only being conducting the town's business in the best way possible to make sure that we have revenue, to make sure that we are being very creative and protective of our funds and our taxpayer dollars, and also getting money back for that investment, but that also when we're doing this, we do this with an eye on who we are now, who we will be in the future, how people are heard, how people are listened to, how we care for each other, and that is the value statement that we have here in Milton and the things that are most important to us. I will say this again, I am not willing to sacrifice one person in this town for $1. I want this town to be a place where everyone feels that they can thrive, where every student feels that they are heard, where every family has a neighbor and many neighbors that will support them in their time of crisis. That is what my family has received here. That is what I want other families to receive here. And that is the town I hope that we are building and that we keep. So I hope, and I thank you for your vote on April 29th. All you, Paul.
Very good, Melissa. Thank you. I've had the opportunity to serve in this town before, and I really enjoyed it, and I'd love to do it again. As I indicated, since I came here in 1995, I've raised 4 daughters in this town. It's been a great experience for me and for them. And I want to continue that, and I operate my law business here and care about this town. I've had the opportunity to serve on the school committee here, and I had the opportunity to serve in Watertown in a key position there. And I think I have the experience that will be useful as the town faces these very, very difficult challenges. One of the things I would look to do, having had school committee experiences, as I said, in 2 towns, is to have a better link between the select board and the school committee, the town administrator and the superintendent, because the schools are our largest department. And I've been disappointed in the past that there's been some kind of divide. I would work very hard to change that. I pride myself in being an independent thinker. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent. I like to listen to all sides. As a lawyer, I'm into the process of government. I want to make sure that the process at the select board is followed, that we do the proper things, and that people know what we're doing. So given that, I'd love for you to consider me as a candidate on April 29th. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for a great forum. Please refer to the candidates' websites for more information, and good luck to our candidates. Please remember to vote on April 29th. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!